Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Z. I am here to give you the guide to crushing the AP question 2. So we're going to work on that today. So if you are in my class, you can go to classwork here and then question 2 worksheet review info under tester assignments. And bring that up. All right. So this worksheet here will give you all the main terms that they are likely to use on question 2. And I'm going to show you a couple of the old question 2s and show you why these terms are the ones you really need to know. So make sure that you go in, you explain, you apply to examples, and you write down the definition in your own words of all of these. So there is on the Discord server. Once again, the details are on the main site. There is the answers to these. So if you get stuck and you want to go back and look, they are still on the Discord server. So we got operationalized, dependent variable, independent variable, correlation, causation, relationship between correlation and causation, experimentation, naturalistic observation, case study, correlational research, and survey. What I would do is I would print this out, I'd fill it out, finish filling it out, print it out, and then uh, go back and uh, look at this whenever you're actually taking the test. Have this on your desk. You are allowed open notes. These would be the notes that I would have for question 2. So also know the ethical guidelines for experimenting on humans and experimenting on animals. Here are the guidelines, humans, and then animals. So I would just have those on hand, and I'll show you why that's important here in a minute. Now here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to go to Google, type in independent variable, and hit enter, because what you're going to get is this. Independent variable, plural noun, independent variables. A variable often denoted by x, whose variation does not depend on that of another. That is correct if you were in a math class. But we are in a psychology class. What we're looking for is this, the independent variable in an experiment. So the independent variable is defined as the variable that is changed or controlled in a scientific experiment. Independent variables are the variables that the experimenter changes to test their dependent variable. A change in the independent variable directly causes a change in the dependent variable. So whenever you're writing it here, what I don't want you to do is come over here, go like this, go Control C, and come over here and go Control V. I want you to actually look at this and write it in your own words. I think that's where most people that are going to get busted for cheating are going to get busted for cheating, is going in and finding ways to copy and paste or writing exactly word for word whatever the first Google search example is. And that won't get you the point. All right, so just wanted to touch on that here. So let's jump to the exam schedule. So this is the question that we're working on today. This is the easier one, so it's the one we're getting into first. Then we'll get into question 1 next week. So we are Central Time for our school, so it'll be at 1 p.m. You're going to have 15 minutes to do this question, and you'll also have 5 minutes to upload it. Now, historically, these questions have had 7 parts to them. I think it'll be less because they also gave you 25 minutes to do the 7 parts. So they will probably not be 7 parts. They'll probably be less, but plan for 7, and then if it's less, we will be pleasantly surprised. So question 2 says you got 15 minutes. It's 45%, almost half of the grade. It's on research and methods. So it's all chapter 1 in our Myers book. So we can really narrow it down. When I tell you if you have these terms, most of the uh, you'll have most of the information in front of you. Question 2 assesses the student's ability to analyze psychological research studies, including analyzing and interpreting quantitative data. And what that really means is know how to read a graph. And as far as how is it laid out, they say it is similar instructional structure to traditional research method questions. So where can we find these traditional research method questions? Well, if you just type in up here, AP Psychology, FRQ, it'll get you this answer here. Go to this page, and you'll be here. All right, so, no, you won't. You'll be here. This is going to give you last year's question. But then if you look right down here, there's practice free responses. This is all of the free response questions from 2018 back to 1999. So a lot of examples here. The good thing here is it gives you the question, gives you the scoring guideline, which is the answers, and then it gives you some sample responses. You can look at the sample responses. They're always going to give you one high score, one medium score, and one low score. So you look at the sample responses and you say, okay, this person got this point because of this. They didn't get this point because of that. All right. So the reason that I'm telling you that the answers are on Discord instead of giving them out here is this right here, scoring distributions. All right, so as you can see here, give or take a couple, 20% of all students who take the test get a 5, 20% get a 4, 20% get a 3, 20% get a 2, and 20% get a 1. So you are in competition with the other people. All right, so we're going to keep our edge and keep that Discord information. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at 2 free responses. First one we're going to look at is last year's set 2 or answer 2. Now, last year there was some irregularities, some cheating going on, and so they had to quickly come out with a second test or a second question. And this is the result. So understand that the College Board does take cheating very seriously. Don't risk it, guys. All right, so Professor Mendez is going to conduct an experiment to investigate the effects of a new medication for treating the symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder. So he's doing a drug test. So it's going to say, explain the concept of compulsion in the context of obsessive compulsive disorder. So you could either know that from the mental disease chapter, but that is not on the new AP test because they're only going up through Unit 7. Or you can go ahead and quickly look it up. But do not copy and paste. Do not write exactly what it says on Google. So explain the concept of compulsion in the context of obsessive compulsive disorder. Well, the obsession is the thoughts that happen in your head that just keep coming. They're intrusive and they just keep coming over and over again. The compulsion is what you do to alleviate the obsession. So if you think that something bad will happen if you don't check your oven every 5 minutes, then your compulsion is actually going over and opening up the oven door. So that's the relationship between obsession and compulsion, and how the concept of compulsion fits into the disorder. All right, so explain why each of the following would be used in the experiment to help establish cause and effect. Um, Random assignment. Why do we need random assignment? We need random assignment so that we can have a control group. So we need a control group. We're going to split everybody up, and we are going to um, pick half the people that want to take the drug and give them the drug, and we're going to take the other half and give them a placebo. So random assignment is just splitting them up into two groups that are randomly distributed. If you put all women in one group and all men in the other group, or all elderly people in one group and all youths in another group, then your test wouldn't be as valid. So this leads us to the next thing, which is the placebo condition. So a placebo is a replacement uh, that is supposed to trick somebody into thinking that they're getting the treatment. So placebos would be if I was giving one half of the group the new drug for obsessive compulsive disorder, I might give the other half of the group um, a Skittle with the S crossed off or something like that. So the placebo condition helps establish cause and effect, because if the people that are given the placebo show the same amount of improvement as the people that are taking the actual drug, then it's just the idea that they are getting help that's helping them, not the actual help. All right, so part C, Professor Mendez presented the research at an international conference. After the presentation, the audience members met in a small group to discuss the research. Explain how each of the following may affect the attendees' decision or discussion of the research. All right, so down here, these four we're not going to go over as in depth, just because they are ideas from the last chapter, the social chapter of the book. Now, we did talk about the cocktail party effect in sensation and perception, so we'll hit that one real quick. Cocktail party effect is that whenever you're talking to somebody, you can drown out the other people that are around you speaking at a similar volume. So it's your ability to focus in on one person, listen to what they're saying, and drown out everybody else. So that may affect their discussion, of course. The rest of them, like I said, shouldn't be on the test this year because they are last chapter stuff. All right, so that is one example here of these. I just went ahead and picked these guys at random. And the other one right here that I picked at random was 2014. All right, so this is adapted from an actual experiment that was done. In a study of the power of power and self-image, participants were not told the true purpose of the study. Instead, they believed that they were participating in a business simulation. Researchers randomly assigned participants to a high power, 44 of them in the high power group, or a low power, 44 in the low power condition. In the high power condition, participants recalled a time when they had power over others. And in the low power condition, they recalled the time when others had power over them. So they're going to ask them to recall this, write it down, talk to somebody about it. They don't actually say what they did in this one, but this is what they're changing. They're changing their mindset. Were they in charge, or was somebody in charge of them? Participants were then asked to adjust in height in centimeters an electronic graphical image, an avatar of themselves to reflect their personal appearance. Results indicated that a statistically significant difference in the participants' perceptions of their own height across the two conditions. So participants in the high power group created taller self-images. Um, so 6 centimeters taller than they actually were, with a standard deviation of 1 to 1.5 centimeters. Standard deviation just means the majority of people fell within 1.5 centimeters of the 6. Then participants in low power conditions, which made their avatar 4 centimeters tall. And the standard deviation there was a little bit less. It was 1. So they pretty much everybody picked between 3 and 5 in that case. All right. So back to our sheet that we started with, right? Describe the levels of the independent variable. Independent variable. Independent variable. So the variable that is changed or controlled in a scientific experiment. What is changed and controlled? That is not the avatar. That is the high power or low power recollection. So the independent variables are, were they in the high power group or the low power group? And that they recall the time when others had power over them or when they had power over others. So that's the levels of the independent variable. Describe how the researchers measured the dependent variable. Dependent variable. Dependent variable is what you're measuring. So for this one, you would need to put height of the avatar. If you wanted to be specific, you could put height of the avatar in centimeters. Create a bar graph illustrating the result of the study. Correctly label each axis. Well, that is not going to be something that they're going to ask you to do on this because they're not going to ask you to write any graphs. I've already looked at some other questions, and they said that there would be no graphing on the AP exams. Explain why the researchers can conclude that there is a cause and effect relationship between independent and dependent variables. Okay. Relationship or between dependent and independent variables, and causation and correlation, right? So because it's an experiment and because they had two groups that they could compare against each other, and because their results were, as it says here, statistically significant, then you can conclude that the power condition they were put in was the determining factor to how tall they made themselves in the video game. All right. So explain what statistical significance means in the context of this study. Okay, so they give us a little bit here, but they don't really give us a whole lot to go on. But statistical significance means, in general, so if you just looked up statistical significance, you would see that statistical significance means that there is a wide enough gap that it's unlikely that it was by chance. So if you just had a bunch of people, if you had 88 people and you just set them in front of an avatar and had them put their height on the graphical image, then, so if you did that and there was a variance, right, then you could say, okay, that's the range of the responses without a experimental condition. But what they did here is they put in an experimental condition, high power and low power. And the statistical significance in this case is talking about the difference between the 6 centimeters and the 4 centimeters is enough, especially when we're using 44 people in each group, that it's unlikely that it was an accident. So it can't prove it wasn't an accident. That's why we do why we review experiments, but or replicate experiments. But it does tell us that excuse me. It does tell us that uh, we have a statistical likelihood, right, um, of there being a difference here. If it were 5.5 and 5, that's not statistically significant, right? That could just be a fluke of the way that the die rolled. But 6 and 4, especially with a large population, is probably enough to say, yeah, that's the way it is. So explain why debriefing would be necessary in the study. Why would we need to debrief these people? Well, back to the sheet, right? Ethical guidelines. So, debrief procedures. Participants must be told the purpose of the study and provided with ways to contact the researcher about the results. So, there was a deception. If the participants are deceived in any way about the nature of the study, the deception must not be so extreme as to invalidate the informed consent. Also, researchers must be very careful about the trauma deceptions may cause. So, there is very little chance of trauma in this, but there was a deception, and because there was a deception, the debrief is necessary. In general, the debrief is necessary, but specifically because of the deception in this case. You have to be told the purpose of the study. Now, normally they would be told the purpose of the study in the informed consent, unless there's a deception involved. So normally before they go in, they're told what they're being studied for. But in this case, because there was a deception involved, it had to happen in the debrief. All right, so let's go ahead and do one bonus one. I'm just going to go ahead and pick one at random off the list. Uh, so once again, AP Psychology free response question takes you to the College Board site. You scroll down. 2019 questions, practice free response questions. Let's go for an older one, 2008. Free response question. All right. Okay, so this will be similar to the question 1 that they have there, and this will be similar to the question 2. So we conducted a variation of the Ash conformity study in which participants made judgments about the length of lines. We randomly assigned participants to one of 2 conditions and told them that the study involved perceptual abilities. In the first condition, participants estimated the length of lines after hearing 5 people pretending to be participants, but they were Confederates, which means they were working for the experimenter, give inaccurate estimates. In the second condition, participants estimated the length without hearing the estimates of the Confederates. As we expected, the participants in the first condition were less accurate in their estimates. They were more likely to go with the Confederates than they were to go with their own gut on the correct answer, demonstrating the tendency to conform to majority influence. All right, so how would each element below relate to specific content of the experiment reported in the abstract? All right, so control group. Control group is the group that is not exposed to the independent variable. So in this case, the group that does not hear the Confederates' answers. So how would each element below be related to the specific content of the experimental report in the abstract? So we go back up to the abstract. The control group is these people. In the second condition, participants estimated the length of line without hearing the estimates of the Confederates. This is so that they have a baseline of people who got it wrong without the Confederates messing them up. So deception, what is deception? Deception is when you tell somebody a lie. So we told them that the study involved perceptual abilities, but we were actually testing whether they were conforming or not. So that is the deception there. Because we deceived them, we're going to have to, as the later question says, debrief them. The operational definition of the dependent variable. What? Operational definition of the dependent variable? All right, so operational definition of the dependent variable is what are they measuring and how are they measuring it? So this is the number of line problems that they got wrong. So these are the people, these are the inaccurate estimates. So what we found out was that the participants in the first condition that had to listen to other people give the wrong answer were likely to go with them and give the wrong answer, whereas people that were given the right answer, or people that were not hearing somebody give them the wrong answer, were likely to go with their own gut and therefore be right more of the time. So the operational definition of the dependent variable is what we're measuring is the number of times that they got the line question correct. Or another way of putting it is the number of times they missed, right? So a hypothesis, what is a hypothesis? A hypothesis is an if-then statement that predicts how your experiment's going to go. So down here at the bottom, as we expected, participants in the first condition were less accurate in their estimates. So if the participants are listening to Confederates that are giving them the bad information, they are more likely to make a mistake than people who don't hear somebody give the wrong estimate. All right, so that's a hypothesis. How does that relate to the experiment? You need a hypothesis to run an experiment. Debriefing. Okay, so we already talked about deception, right? Back on this page, deception. Debriefing. So participants must be told the purpose of the study and provided with ways to contact the researcher about the result. So because we did a deception, we're going to have to debrief them and tell them what the study was actually about. We'll also have to give them a chance to pull their name off of the study if they don't want to be reported or they don't want their results reported because we lied to them. You have to do that. That's part of the informed consent part there. So how might participants' estimates of line length in the study be related to the following? Cognitive dissonance. All right, so cognitive dissonance is a big concept. Let me go ahead real quick. Remember, it is open book, so you can look it up in the book. All right. So, cognitive dissonance, the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as related to behavioral decisions and attitude changes. So, let's look at this example because that doesn't really tell me a whole lot. Cognitive dissonance refers to a situation involving conflicting attitudes, beliefs, or behaviors. Um, for example, when people smoke, the behavior, they know smoking causes cancer in their head, cognition. They're in a state of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable. It's when you believe something, but you're doing something wrong anyways. So in this case, you believe that you are right in your estimate of the line length, but because everybody else is giving you the bad information, you feel pulled to do what they want to do rather than um, go with what your gut says. All right. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this was the big one on this question. This is the one not, or most people didn't get. We did talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs in class in the humanist section, but the hierarchy of needs is that we need to have our base needs met. We need to have food, water. We need to have safety. Then we need to have then we need to have belonging. Then we need to have esteem, and then self-actualization. So being right is in the esteem level. So it's in the it's in the one from the top level. So the esteem level is that you've been recognized as doing something right and something good. And that's high level thinking. That's way up there. However, the pull that we have is belonging, right? Below esteem is belonging. So if you're right, but everybody in the group hates you, then you're not going to be good with the group. So what you desire deeper down is to be with the group, not to be right. So some of you guys are contrarians and may disagree with this, but at the base level, that is true. And even below that, if you look at evolutionary psychology, is safety. And remember, safety in numbers. So if everybody else says there's a lion coming, it actually costs you a whole lot less to turn around and run with them and look foolish than to say, I don't see a lion and stand there and take your chances, right? So Maslow's hierarchy of needs plays into this because um, lower level of the Maslow's hierarchy are overriding higher levels. If you can't get the lower levels met, then the higher levels don't matter. If you can't breathe, then you're not caring about your yoga class, right? So that was 3 of these that I've gone over. You guys are going to crush this. I hope that you see how this relates to this and how you'll be able to have this on your desk. So you'll have probably 2 or 3 of the answers on your desk just by having this. Remember, it is open book, but that does not mean that going to the first answer that Google pops up and copy and pasting it. First of all, don't copy and paste at all, but going word for word and not understanding it is not enough to get you guys the point. So I know you guys are going to crush this. Good luck. Remember, the answers to that sheet are on Discord. Miss you guys. Hope that you are doing well. Hope that you're staying safe. And I will be back next week with the question 1 video.